Sangye churdak soki chognam la changchu bardu dagni kyap suchi dagi chenyen gi pesonam ki drola penchu sangye du parshu. Sangye churdak soki chognam la changchu bardu dagni kyap suchi dagi chenyen gi pesonam ki drola penchu sangye du parshu. Sangye churdak soki chognam la jangtu bardu dagni kyap suchi dagi chernyengi pesonam ki drola penchir sangye druparsho.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Let's just do a couple of minutes meditation on the breath. So just try to focus single-pointedly on that. Now just think about the suffering of all the suffering sentient beings, hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, suras, asuras, intermediate state beings, all the samsaric sentient beings. Generate a strong feeling of compassion, wanting them to be free from all their various sufferings forever. And think, the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. That depends upon completing all the realizations of the path to enlightenment. And that depends upon studying and understanding what the path to enlightenment is, and knowing all the steps on the path to enlightenment. Therefore, I'm going to study the teachings on Atisha's seminal lamrim text, Stages of the Path text, the lamp for the path to enlightenment, in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So in that way, very briefly, we generate the thought of bodhicitta, generate what's called contrived bodhicitta. We don't really have bodhicitta yet, we haven't realized it. So we generate in our mind sort of an approximation of it, understanding what the idea is. The determination to reach enlightenment for the sole purpose of enlightening all sentient beings. Okay, thank you. Anybody got any questions or anything before we move on? Okay. Anyway, as I always say, if you have any, just put your hand up, your own hand or the little yellow one, wherever it is. So last time we were reading from Geshe Sonam Rinpoche's commentary on Atisha's Lamp for the Path. So just go back a paragraph or two. Cyclic existence doesn't refer to lay or family life, and becoming a monk or nun doesn't mean we leave cyclic existence behind. The only way to do that is to stop the process by which we take birth as a result of contaminated actions and disturbing emotions. So contaminated actions are those actions, even if they're positive, done without an understanding of emptiness, ultimate reality. And disturbing emotions are delusions based on ignorance, attachment, and aversion. And then all the other sons and daughters of the three poisons. The 12-part process of dependent arising consists of two sets of causes and effects, both of which must be complete for a specific rebirth in cyclic existence to occur. The two sets are the projecting causes and their effects, and the completing causes and their effects. Ignorance, formative action, what we call karma. Ignorance, karma, karmic formation, and a consciousness are the projecting causes. Their projected effects are name and form, in body and mind. The 6 sources, contact and feeling. The accomplishing or completing causes are craving, grasping, and existence. Existence is sometimes called becoming. The effects they accomplish are birth, aging, and death, or rebirth, aging, and death. So aging and death are the 12th link together. The 12 links make up the process which leads to ordinary rebirth. The 12 links making up the process which leads to ordinary rebirth are normally enumerated in this order. At present, we're experiencing a human life. What led to this good rebirth? A moment of ignorance gave rise to an action. What is meant by ignorance? Dharmakirti and Chandrakirti define it not just as nescience, like not knowing, but a wrong conception diametrically opposed to the understanding of the person and other phenomena as selfless. This conception apprehends them existing in and of themselves. The Sangha and Vasubandhu compare the function of ignorance to that of darkness, which conceals objects, and refer to it as confusion which conceals and prevents us from seeing the fundamental nature of phenomena, ultimate reality, and the connection between actions and their effects. So there's 2 levels of ignorance: ignorance of ultimate reality and ignorance of conventional reality or karma. All forms of confusion are rooted in confusion regarding the basic nature of things. Whether ignorance is defined in the former or latter way, it can only be eliminated by understanding the fundamental nature of reality. When confusion concerning reality and confusion concerning the connection between actions and their effects are present, one does not take into account or is not conscious of the fact that bad actions produce disagreeable effects. One thus performs negative actions which have the potential to yield a bad rebirth. Since only positive actions can lead to a human rebirth, in the past we must not have been ignorant of the connection between actions and their effects. However, ignorance regarding the fundamental nature of reality has been present, and thus the actions we performed, though virtuous, were contaminated and had the power to precipitate another birth within cyclic existence. So I'll just see if I can do this. So is that, can you see that?
Yes.
It's not terribly clear, is it? So this is the Wheel of Life, the drawing we were talking about, given by one king to another. So in the chat, now I've lost my Lost my Zoom. Sorry, I'm a bit of an amateur at this. So you can see this drawing, right?
Yes.
And is there anything in the chat? I can't see the chat right now.
No, there's nothing in the chat right now.
So Bill Cameron was going to post a link to 4-part.
It is there.
It is?
Well, at least I put it in before we started.
Oh,
I see it in my chat.
there's a link to Jada Rinpoche's 4-part teachings on the Wheel of Life.
Maybe it's still. No, it's not. Okay, I'll put it in again.
Anyway, I suggest if you're interested and oh, there it is. Yeah, so there it is. You can see that. Jada Rinpoche is one of the great living masters at the moment. He was the abbot of Namgyal Monastery, His Holiness's monastery, for a while in Dharamsala. And he came to Kurukulla Center, 3 or 4 years ago, I guess. So he gave this teaching at our center, a retreat center in Dharamsala, Tushita, a few years ago. And so very, very nice teaching. And he tells the long story about how the drawing came about, the king, one king offering it to the other and so forth. So, you know, I'm not going to do that now. But anyway, so this is the first link up here, this blind man. Okay, so we'll just refer to this from time to time. So out of ignorance, you know, in a previous life, or with ignorance of ultimate nature, but understanding the nature of reality, the nature of cause and effect, we created positive actions. You know, in order to have this perfect human rebirth, we must have had the previous one, because that's really what it takes to create enough merit to receive the life that we have now. And, you know, we must have had lots of perfect human rebirths in the past. And since the past is beginningless, they can still be pretty rare, you know, few and far between. But then with that ignorance, we created karma. So the second link here is karmic formation, symbolized by a potter making pots. I don't know what I'm doing here. In its second moment, an action causes and leaves an imprint on the consciousness. Consciousness at the moment, so consciousness is here. This is the monkey doing whatever it's doing, jumping about. Consciousness at the moment when the imprint is implanted is referred to as causal consciousness. The imprint it holds has the potential to project another existence if activated by the requisite conditions. Ignorance, formative action, and consciousness are like the sower. The seed and the field in which, ignorance, formative action, and consciousness are like the sower, ignorance, the seed, karma, and the field, consciousness, in which the seed is sown. So ignorance is what sows the seed in the consciousness. You probably can't see my cursor there. But what was projected in our case, the different stages of development in the womb. The first stage, at the moment of conception, is name and form. So that's here, this fourth one, which is shown by people in a boat being ferried across a river by an oarsman. Name here refers to the aggregates of feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. So the four mental aggregates. The physical element, the fertilized ovum, at the moment of conception constitutes form. Then the six sources, the faculties of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind develop. The faculties of body, so that's here shown as this house with empty windows. The six sources, the faculties of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind develop. The faculties of body and mind are present from conception, but undergo further development. Contact describes, so that's these man and woman together. Contact describes the ability to differentiate between pleasant and unpleasant objects when a faculty, like a sense faculty, consciousness, and an object come together. So whenever these three things are in apposition, like a visual object, the eye sense, and eye consciousness, then a feeling inevitably arises. So there are three kinds of feeling: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. This results in pleasurable, painful, or neutral feelings. What activates the imprint held by consciousness? Craving and grasping, two disturbing emotions whose nature is attachment activated. So feeling is represented here, this guy with an arrow in his eye. I guess that's an unpleasant feeling. Just a guess. And craving is this guy drinking alcohol. And grasping, which is sort of a development of craving, is this monkey reaching into a tree for fruit. Craving and grasping. So craving and grasping, they activate the imprint. During the death process, we experience craving in the form of clinging to our body, followed by grasping, an intensified form of craving for future existence. So when we're dying, when our mind is leaving our body, we have this terrible feeling and this thought that I'm becoming non-existent. So this strong desire arises for continued existence. And so we grasp for any kind of, like, grasping, a drowning person grasping at straws. Straw won't hold you up. It's better than nothing, we think, So it's death, we grasp at anybody. So even if a horrible hell body comes up, we'll take it. That's better than than becoming non-existent. Of course, we won't become non-existent, but our ignorance prevents us from understanding that at that, desperate time. This is followed by existence, a state of readiness in which an imprint's full potential has been activated. So this is becoming, I think that's a pregnant woman. She doesn't look very pregnant. Maybe it's not 6 weeks yet and she doesn't know she's pregnant. It immediately precedes the next existence, is classified as action and called by the name of what it produces. We have a great stock of imprints, both virtuous and non-virtuous. Craving and grasping trigger the strongest imprint present. If the imprints are of equal strength, they trigger the imprint of an action with which we are very familiar, or the most recent imprint. So, you know, in liberation, there's, in teachings on karma, there's a section on which karma, what determines which karma ripens next. So, you know, there are, you know, strong karmas. So, you know, if we've personally killed an elephant, we've created much stronger karma of killing than if we killed a mosquito, because it took just so much more effort. So anyway, I'm not going to go into that now, but you know, there are these different factors that determine which karma ripens next. So he mentions a couple of them here. If they're equal strength, they trigger the imprint of an action with which we're very familiar. You know, so the karmas with strong karma will ripen next, or the one to actions to which we're habituated. So remember, this is the result, karmic result, similar to the cause in habit. So, you know, if we have a habit to kill or steal or lie or whatever, it's more easy to do it again. You know, it's going to ripen more sooner than an action that we've done only very occasionally. Well, and then if those are equal, then the most recent imprint. So when all conditions are right, the seed we have sown is ready to sprout. Craving and grasping act on the imprint, just as water, heat, and a fertile medium act on a seed. Existence is like a seed from which the sprout is about to emerge. Birth from the womb then takes place, which is like the emergence of a sprout. So that's this one here, the 11th link, in a woman giving birth. And aging and death follow. So that's the 12th one here. So that's an aging person and a few dead bodies around, I think. Apparently there's a painting of the Wheel of Life that Jada Rinpoche used in his teachings. And it was, the painting is at Tushita, the retreat center. And apparently when that was being painted, Jada Rinpoche gave input to the artist. So I'm trying to get a copy of that, because that has Jada Rinpoche's kind of seal of approval, and that would be a good one to have. So if I can get that, I wrote to the SPC, but I don't think she's there at the moment. So anyway, I'll follow up on that. But you know, everybody knows we have a painting of the Wheel of Life near the tea station at the center. We did. Is it still there? So this is how we conventionally. Huh?
It is still there.
Yeah, thanks. This is how we conventionally perceive it, though the moment of conception may be regarded as birth, after which aging immediately begins. So now, if we think of these 12 links in the context of two lives, how many took place in our last life? So I just want to, this is Lama Zopa Rinpoche's textbook that we used to use at Copan in the early courses in the 70s, Wish Fulfilling Golden Sun. So that's online. It was here that a lot of us were introduced to the Wheel of Life.
Nick, I put a link to the Tushita Wheel of Life in the chat.
Okay, cool, great. So I just go through this, what Lama Zopa Rinpoche taught. Another way to understand the suffering nature of samsara is to meditate on the gradual evolution of the 12 dependent links, as Guru Shakyamuni Buddha showed. This is represented by the symbolic drawing of the Wheel of Life, also called the Circle of 12 Dependent Originations, in Sanskrit, Praticca Samutpada, in Tibetan, Tendril Chönyi. It's held in the mouth of the Lord of Death, in the mouth, and his claws there hanging onto it. Showing how all beings who live in the 6 realms of samsara are controlled by or not free from impermanence and death. The wheel is also supported by his hands and feet, symbolizing how these beings are trapped by true suffering and the true cause of suffering, delusion and karma. Then here there's Guru Shakyamuni Buddha holding the moon. I've written this in my notes. Guru Shakyamuni Buddha holding the moon symbolizes nirvana, or release from samsara, the bondage of delusion and karma. And sometimes there's there's writing there, doing a verse that talks about transcending delusion and karma and attaining liberation. I and most other sentient beings, so this was a meditation we're supposed to do. I and most other sentient beings are suffering in this circle of. So when we had these notes, some of it was teaching, and then there was in the thing there was a line along the side there, which was how we were supposed to meditate on this teaching in the first person. So I and most other sentient beings, it says most other sentient beings because, bodhisattvas and arhats, 8th, 9th and 10th level bodhisattvas and arhats are liberated from cyclic existence, but not fully enlightened, so they're still sentient beings, but they're not suffering. I and most other sentient beings are suffering in this circle of interdependent origination. Its root is ignorance, which is the complete opposite of the Dharma wisdom that perceives absolute reality. So then the first link, ignorance, marikpa. The blind man shown on the wheel of life symbolizes the ignorant person who does not see where he's going, where he'll be reborn, what he's suffered, or what he will suffer in rebirth. Ignorance is the cause of the 84,000 delusions. There are 2 kinds of ignorance. Ignorance of absolute truth, which binds me more strongly to samsara. The main purpose of all the teachings of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha is to remove ignorance by realization of the absolute truth, just as the main purpose of medicine is to remove sickness. And the second, ignorance of karma arises from ignorance of absolute truth. It causes rebirth in the three lower realms. Ignorance of karma. So then second, Rinpoche talks about karmic formation. Dechikile. Ignorance generates karmic formation. This is symbolized by a man producing clay pots. Just as a clay pot can be fashioned into many sizes and shapes, so does the creation of different karmas bring different results. Karma may be meritorious, demeritorious, or indifferent, or fortunate, unfortunate, or immovable. Anyway, so then the third one is consciousness. Here, the monkey. Karmic formation generates consciousness. This is symbolized by a monkey with fruit in its hand, swinging from tree to tree, or building to building. To show that consciousness bearing karmic impressions joins past to present and present to future, the monkey is uncontrolled, impure, because its outlook depends on its position in the tree, just as my consciousness depends on karma. Consciousness is the mind, which perceives the different aspects of objects. There are 6 kinds of consciousness, those of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So then the fourth link, the mind and Namarupa, name and form. Mingzuk, Tibetan. Consciousness generates name, mind, and form, body. This is symbolized by a man rowing a boat and shows that to do so, many conditions such as the boat, the oarsman, the ocean, etc., are necessary. Similarly, name and form could not exist without the 5 skandhas, 5 aggregates. The skandha of form is the fertilized egg, and the skandha of feeling, cognition, compounded phenomena, and consciousness inhabiting the fertilized egg are the name, mind. So then the 6 sense organs. Name and form generate 6 sense organs. This is symbolized by an empty house. From a distance, the house looks full and lived in, but it is empty. Similarly, the 6 sense organs are empty because they are meaningless without an object. For the 6 sense organs, there are also 6 outer objects and 6 inner sense bases. So as before, you know, with the visual, with the eye organ, we need an visual object and a visual sense consciousness. Sixth, then is contact here. 6 sense organs generate contact. This is symbolized by the contact of a man and a woman, the meeting of sense organs with their objects. There are 6 contacts to do with the 6 senses. And the next one, 7th, is feeling. Contact generates feeling. This is symbolized by a man who, with an arrow in his eye, is suffering because of his contact with an object. Without contact, there is no feeling. Therefore, if my mind is uncontrolled, I'm better off to avoid contact with objects that lead to more greed and more suffering, and further suffering. This is why Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, with great compassion, made the rule that one should be well content and have few possessions. there are three kinds of feelings. Suffering, which generates hatred, happiness, which generates greed or attachment, and indifference, which generates ignorance. And the eighth one is craving. So that's the guy with the arrow in his eye, 7. This one, craving. Contact and feeling generate craving. This is symbolized by a man drinking wine. Just as this man's thirst is never satisfied, so the person deluded by greed is never satisfied and craves more things. This greed ruins the present and many future lives. There are three kinds of craving, and all cause suffering. Desiring release from fear and ugly objects. Desiring, so that's aversion. Desiring no release from beautiful objects to which I'm attached. And attachment to the body, fearing loss of the I at death. Next, 9, craving generates grasping. So here. This is symbolized by a monkey picking fruit from a tree. Having tasted one fruit, he clings to the tree for more and more. Grasping is created by craving and produces and procreates becoming, just as human beings grasp at and cling to their physical bodies. This grasping causes greed, hatred, and ignorance, bringing much suffering. There are 4 kinds of grasping, and all cause suffering. Attachment to beauty, attachment to wrong beliefs or doctrines, such as the belief that karma and past and future lives are non-existent. Clinging to the wrong conception of the self-existent I. And 4th, holding the belief that immoralities, for example, sacrificing living beings or deriving sexual happiness, are pure methods of receiving liberation. And 10th is becoming, sipa. So in Tibetan, this wheel of life is called the sipe kolo. So sipa is becoming. It's called the wheel or existence. So the wheel of life, the wheel of existence, the wheel of becoming. Sipe kolo. Grasping at the body generates becoming. This is symbolized by a pregnant woman. The greater my attachment to the physical body, the sooner will rebirth come. The becoming caused by ignorance is strengthened because craving and grasping conditioned it. There are 4 kinds of becoming, all under the control of delusion and karma. The becoming of rebirth, the becoming of death, the becoming of intermediate, and the becoming of lifetime. So 11, rebirth. Becoming generates rebirth. This is symbolized by a woman giving birth. The skandhas are determined by delusion and karma and determine the form of the present rebirth. There are 4 kinds of rebirth. In the womb, from an egg, by heat, and intuitive, that is, not needing the bodies of parents. So finally, the 12th one, here, aging and death. Old age and death. Birth usually generates old age. Well, old age usually, but not necessarily, can die young. So aging really begins the moment we're born. As soon as we're born, we're aging. This is symbolized by an old man walking with a cane. Becoming old is the result of delusion and karma. Birth or old age generate death. This is symbolized by a corpse. Death, so there's a corpse there. Death ends the life and the round of existence circles again. So then the meditation continues. I do not desire suffering, so I must stop circling in samsara. To do so, I must overcome delusion and karma. Ignorance leads to action, which leaves impressions on the consciousness. The results of those may appear in this lifetime, the next, or in subsequent lives. The trip of the 12 dependent links may be completed in 2 or 3 lifetimes. An example follows. In this lifetime, I ignorantly create the karma for rebirth as a rat. This impression being left on my consciousness. But for the rest of my life, I give up attachment to the samsaric life, become celibate, and keep the precepts purely. So the craving, grasping, and becoming of the rat rebirth are interrupted by those of the desired perfect human rebirth. So that could be us, before we met the Dharma, we created a lot of negative karmas to be reborn in the lower realms, for example, as a rat. But then we met the Dharma and we tried to purify it as well as we could, and didn't create the negative karma didn't create the craving, grasping, becoming of the rat or the other lower rebirths, and we created the cause for a perfect human rebirth. So B, the next life, I'm reborn human, living in the perfect chance, and the 7 results from the dependence of a perfect human rebirth finish with this second life. But as this life is not spent in pure practice, rebirth as a rat occurs in the next life, in the third life, because its craving, grasping, and becoming are now the strongest. In this life, in the third life, the dependence of the rat finishes. Nagarjuna said, 2 deluded actions arise from 3 deluded causes. 7 uncontrolled results arise from these 2 deluded actions. Again, 3 deluded causes arise from these 7 results. Such a wheel of life goes round and round. So the 2 deluded actions are, just shrink this a little bit if I can. So the 2 deluded actions that Nagarjuna is referring to are karmic formation, the links 2 and 10, karmic formation and becoming. 2 deluded actions arise from 3 deluded causes. That's ignorance, number 1, craving and grasping, 8 and 9. So ignorance, craving, and grasping. 2 deluded actions, karmic formation and becoming, arise from 3 deluded causes, ignorance, craving, and grasping, and 7 uncontrolled results arise from those 2 deluded actions. So then that's the other links, consciousness, name and form, so 6 sense objects, contact, feeling, becoming, rebirth, aging and death.
Wapa? Okay. It's okay, Rock.
I've made notes here in tiny writing that I can hardly read. So trying to see if it's relevant or not. Okay, so that's the meditation. Okay, so that was Lama Zopa Rinpoche's explanation there. So getting back to Geshe Sonam Rinchen, so he said that if we think of these 12 links in the context of 2 lives, how many took place in our last life? So his footnote is, the process can take more than 2 lives. So Rinpoche described how the 12 links can be experienced over 3 lives as well as 2. The example there was 3 lives. During one, it has to be either 2 or 3 lives, that's it. During one life, but they don't have to be consecutive. During one life, the first 3 steps occur. Ignorance gives rise to an action which leaves an imprint on the consciousness. During a later life, craving and grasping trigger that imprint, producing existence, the full activation of the imprint. This gives rise to a rebirth in which development in the womb, birth, aging, and death take place. So the important thing is to remember what Nagarjuna said, the 2 deluded actions lead to 3 deluded causes, and these 3 deluded causes bring 7 uncontrolled results. Such a wheel of life goes round and round. So this wish-fulfilling golden sun that I just read from is online at lamayeshi.com. So if you wanted to do that meditation as described by Rinpoche, you could go there. It's anyway, you can find it.
Excuse me, Nick, can I ask a question, please?
Mm-hmm.
With respect to the projected effects, how is contact and feeling different from the contact and feeling that would be part of name and form? So you have the separate links 6 and 7.
Yeah.
But in the name, in link 4, the name includes compositional factors, which would include contact and feeling. So
I think those are potentials. I think those are potentials. But I mean, it all happens very quickly. I'm trying to think. I mean, these experiences happen in the womb, contact and feeling. If we, read teaching on the suffering of rebirth, that's one of the meditations we do, the different experiences that the fetus experiences, again, to help us generate renunciation, not to want to be reborn ever again. Because even in the womb, there's the suffering of rebirth isn't just the actual, in the process of delivery, the fetus, at a certain point anyway, I'm not sure exactly when, according to the Dharma teaching, the fetus experiences contact, feeling, and usually mostly unpleasant feelings. So the name and form, the next one is the 6 sense bases, which as they begin to develop are empty until there's contact and feeling, until there's contact. So that's how I think about it. Otherwise, I can't answer the question.
Did my question make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know the answer.
Could it be that there are 2 processes? The name and form process is the result of the ignorance as it goes forward, and then having achieved the first name and form, you go through the process again.
I think maybe the contact is the polluted mental factor. So the name and form is just, it's not polluted yet, it's the contact, but the 6 sources make it polluted mental factor. So the contact is a polluted mental factor, and that brings feelings. That's what I read before, maybe. So the name and form is neutral. Maybe.
Might have to take this under advisement. I've got these couple of books on the 12 links in detail. So let me have a look at those and see if I can come up with the answer, Jen.
Thank you very much.
It's a profound question. That's good though. We need to think about these things. That's great. So just look at this again. If we think of these 12 links in the context of 2 lives, how many took place in our last life? Initially, ignorance, formative action and consciousness, and later craving, grasping and existence took place in the previous life. How many took place in this life in our mother's womb? Name and form, the 6 sources, contact and feeling occurred in her womb. So I don't know if the answer's in there somewhere. What part of the process have we reached? We've all been born and are not yet in the throes of death. So whether we are young or old, we are aging. Most of us do not like to mention death, and even the thought of it, if we can bear to think about it, is undeniably unpleasant. None of us wants to experience separation from loved ones or possessions, least of all from our body, to which we instinctively cling as we die. The separation of body and mind causes anguish and makes us give voice to lamentation. The physical effects of death are painful. It affects our mind, causing profound unhappiness. Together, the pain and unhappiness give rise to intense distress. In meditation, we evoke this vividly and examine from where it has come. The anguish of death is a result of aging and sickness, which is a consequence of being born. So now we're going backwards. Birth occurs because we're conceived in the womb through the force of a previously created action. In this way, we retrace our steps to the initial moment of ignorance. Meditation is done on the forward and reverse sequence of the afflicted aspect of the 12 links through which we remain in cyclic existence. This allows us to discover how the process is propelled by actions and disturbing emotions, and to recognize that unless we stop these, we can never escape suffering. So by meditating backwards on the wheel, we sort of understand how to undo this process of continued existence in samsara. Only by understanding that the object to which our misconception of the self clings is a fabrication can we hope to get rid of the ignorance which keeps the process in motion. The exalted ones with direct knowledge of selflessness of the person and aggregates don't perform actions which give rise to cyclic existence. So, you know, the arhats, Arya Bodhisattvas. Who does? Ordinary beings like us who do not see reality clearly. When ignorance ceases to control our actions, we create no fresh actions which could produce a rebirth in cyclic existence. Nevertheless, we may still be reborn in cyclic existence owing to the remaining imprints of past contaminated actions. So, you know, that was like the example Rinpoche gave. You know, we, in one life, say in our previous life, we created the karma to be reborn a rat, but then we started practicing Dharma and created enough imprints so that at the time of death of our last life, the craving, grasping, becoming of being reborn as a human fertilized the imprint of a previously created human rebirth, or one created in that life, so that we were born human in this life. But the rat karma is still there. We didn't purify it enough in our last life. So then in our next life, or in some subsequent life, you know, if our Dharma practice doesn't continue strongly, and we don't purify that karma, then eventually, either in next life or in 100 lives from now or whenever, that rat karma may be strong enough to arise at the time of death of its previous life, and then in that next life we would get reborn as a rat. And then the 7 results of that rat karma will then be manifest in that life. When through sufficient familiarity with the direct understanding of reality, all disturbing emotions, including craving, grasping, stop, will never again take rebirth in cyclic existence. Because even if the imprints for such a rebirth were present, so we may still have the imprints of the rat, they could not be activated because we overcame the ignorance, the craving and grasping by realizing emptiness. Thinking in this way, we contemplate the purified aspect of the 12 links, how the absence of ignorance stops formative action, stops karma, and so on. We can also contemplate this process in reverse order, considering how stopping aging and death is the result of stopping birth, how birth is stopped because there's no conception, how conception does not occur because craving, grasping, and formative action have stopped. And in this way, we retrace the steps which end cyclic existence to the stopping of ignorance. So again, going backwards. The person who creates the causes that bring about rebirth in cyclic existence and who experiences their results has no inherent existence, but exists as a mere attribution. Hearing, thinking, and meditating are necessary to understand this and to preclude conclusively the existence of the object, an inherently existent person, to which our conception of the self adheres. This requires extensive study, personal investigation, and the use of reasoning. Once we're conversant with the basic terminology, the 12 links and how they function are not difficult to understand. Everything hinges on how we use that understanding and whether we use it to put an end to our own cyclic existence. Even if we cannot yet overcome our ignorance regarding the fundamental nature of reality, we can decrease our ignorance concerning the connection between actions and their effects by learning what is and is not constructive and what kind of effects such actions produce. Say that again. Even if we cannot yet overcome our ignorance regarding the fundamental nature of reality, so even though we can't yet fully realize emptiness, we can decrease our ignorance concerning the connection between actions and their effects by learning what is and is not constructive and what kinds of effects such actions produce. So, by studying the teachings on karma, which are, quite extensive in Geshe Zopa's second volume of his steps of his commentary on the Lamrim Chenmo. By understanding that, at least we can reduce, if not completely eliminate, our creation of negative karma, and we can create more positive karma. So, again, these two levels of ignorance, ignorance of ultimate reality into ignorance of conventional reality or karma. We attempt to live accordingly by cultivating what is constructive and discarding what is not. So practicing the 10 virtuous actions, which are the opposite of the 10 non-virtuous actions. The 3 non-virtuous actions of body, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, the 4 non-virtuous actions of speech, lying, speaking harshly, slandering, and gossiping, and the 3 non-virtuous actions of mind, which are covetousness, ill will, and wrong views. So by studying teachings on the 10 non-virtuous actions, recognizing very clearly how we create those non-virtuous actions, how they function within us, how we have the tendency to keep repeating those actions. When we meditate on the results that those actions are going to bring, suffering and rebirth in the lower realms, if we meditate effectively, then we can definitely stop creating those actions, and then we also take precepts, pratimoksha vows at least, to decrease our tendency to engage in those actions. And so gradually we create less and less negative karma and more positive karma, keeping our precepts purely, more precepts, longer period of time. And so as our mind sort of becomes more refined through that practice, it makes it easier for us to understand and meditate on emptiness and get a deeper and deeper understanding of it, at least intellectually, until, eventually we can get a bare perception of it. But, to get a bare perception or experience of emptiness, we have to have pure morality, and we have to have developed certain power of concentration. So, our 2 or 3 minute meditation on the breath at the beginning of these sessions can give us a clue as to how strong our concentration is, and how far we have yet to go in developing concentration before we can really get an experience of emptiness. Meditation on the 12 links helps us to diagnose our true condition and investigate its causes. We can then ascertain whether a cure is possible. If so, the only sensible thing to do is to begin the treatment, which I just mentioned. So that's Geshe Sonam Rinpoche's commentary on the 4th verse of Atisha's Lamp for the Path, where he talks about the path of the middle capable being, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche calls it, or usually called the middle scope, or the practitioner of intermediate capacity or intermediate capability. So what His Holiness has to say quite briefly on the 12 links is in Illuminating the Path. The interlocking change of the 12 links demonstrates the entire process of evolution and explains the individual's existence in samsara. It's very important for us to understand this. There's no concept of there being some kind of central unifying creator around which everything evolves. So, His Holiness in dialogue with Christians or Muslims or Jews, I'm not sure about Hindus, he'll say, you talk about God, we talk about karma. So the Buddhist equivalent of God is karma. And there's no concept of there being some kind of central unifying creator around which everything evolves. I don't know why this God delusion took off so readily in this world, But I mean, most people seem to believe in a God, I mean, there are a lot of atheists around, I guess, but I think still the majority of people believe in some kind of creator God. I think it's a nonsensical idea, personally. What?
Oh, this is Aisha. I think that God could be seen as a meta consciousness, which would align with Buddhist teaching. So in an evolved sense of all of us coming to a place of entering the path helps evolve God's consciousness. That's my opinion. But so God is a culmination of all of our karmic paths. That's how I view God.
Why do you want to use the word God?
Only because it's in common usage, really. So just as a way.
That's not the common understanding, is it?
No. So yeah, a different understanding with common usage of the name God. Yeah.
Lama Zopa Rinpoche once said something in one of the courses. He didn't often address the subject, but he said that as he understood it, the Christian teaching is that God created everything. Therefore, God created suffering. And if you want to get rid of an effect, you have to destroy the cause, or get rid of the cause, which would mean destroying or getting rid of God. So to him, it sort of didn't really make sense. Now, that's not the deep theological discussion of it all, but it kind of sums it up, the Buddhist approach to there being a creator that,
Do you think that
created everything.
if we were all parts of that creation, then we're a culmination of whatever God is, and it's only the perspective that there was one almighty creator when actually we are creating our own reality.
Well, I think that's what His Holiness says. Is you talk about God, we talk about karma, and here, as he says, there's no concept of there being some kind of central unifying creator around which everything evolves.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, well, we're living in a world where we're surrounded by people who believe in God and other people who are kind of nihilistic and scientific materialists. So that's our environment. His Holiness says, while we're experiencing the consequences of one set of 12 links, the ignorance and karmic action links of another cycle have already been set in motion. Thus, there are ever-rotating, interlocking chains of 12 links of dependent origination, constantly keeping us bound to the wheel of life, which is how our evolution through cyclic existence is explained. So, as Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche always said that, while we're experiencing just one set of countless 12 links that we've created since the beginning of this time, while we're experiencing just one, we're constantly creating more and more, sort of binding ourselves more and more tightly to the wheel of life. So even as we're experiencing out one set of 12, sort of getting rid of that, we've created just in one life so many more. So it's kind of like a mind-numbing, endless process that until we get to its very root and destroy that, we'll never be free. The Buddha actually taught 12 links in two ways. One charts our evolution through cyclic existence from ignorance to karmic volitional acts to consciousness and so on down the chain, while the other presents the same process in reverse, explaining how we escape from samsara and reach enlightenment. By bringing an end to ignorance, volitional acts, karma, are prevented. By preventing volitional acts, consciousness is prevented, and so on. Commenting on these teachings, the Indian master Sangha identified three principal features. Everything has its causes. In the Buddhist teaching on dependent origination, the notion of divine creation is rejected because everything comes into being as a result of causes and conditions. These causes are impermanent. Even the causes that set the whole cycle in motion are themselves subject to causes and conditions and are therefore impermanent. And three, only compatible and corresponding causes give rise to the effects. Causation is not a random process. Not everything can produce everything. Causation is not a random process. Not everything can produce everything. Causes and effects must be compatible. Only commensurate causes lead to corresponding results. And, in karma, they sum up, positive karma brings happiness, negative karma brings suffering. That's kind of the important thing to understand. A Sangha identified these factors by commenting on a passage from the sutras where the Buddha stated, because this exists, that exists. Because this originated, that will ensue. And because there is fundamental ignorance, volitional acts will follow. I think that's from the Rice Seedling Sutra. I don't know if that's translated into English. Okay, so all that brings us to Atisha's verse 5. So where he talks about now the path of the practitioner of greatest capability, Mahayana path, those who through their personal suffering truly want to end completely all the suffering of others are persons of supreme capacity. So by our understanding the depth and extent of our own suffering in samsara since beginning this time, we can easily understand what others are going through. And as we have compassion for ourselves and want to end our own suffering, we can understand others feel the same. But our advantage, if you like, is that we understand where the suffering comes from, and we understand how to end it. And if we open our minds, we can see how limited it is just to want to understand and end our own suffering and forget about the others. So, it's like I've said before, people who have an illness and experience a certain illness, a particular kind of cancer or something, I always think of the junk bond king, Michael Milken. Anyone remember him? In the 80s. I think he was the guy supposed to have invented junk bonds. Not even sure what they are, but it's my limited knowledge of the stock market. But he got prostate cancer and he went to jail for a while. I think Trump might have pardoned him even though he's out of jail. I think Trump pardoned him. He got prostate cancer, so he set up a foundation with his junk bond money, I guess, to help, if not eliminate prostate cancer, but diagnose it early and develop effective treatments for it. So it's like that, this personal experience of a particular, and you see lots of other rich people, their child got a neuroblastoma, so they set up the neuroblastoma foundation or this foundation or that foundation to deal with this particular disease or that particular disease. So, those of us who understand and have a feeling for an experience of our own suffering in cyclic existence, we don't so much set up Dharma foundations, we set up Dharma centers or help develop Dharma centers which explain how to diagnose and treat suffering of samsara. So, and we do that to benefit those who are suffering in samsara, which is essentially nearly all the sentient beings. So that's our project. And that's what Atisha is getting at. Those who through their personal suffering truly want to end completely all the suffering of others are persons of supreme capacity. So that's really the ultimate purpose of our life is, I always say at the beginning, the purpose of our life is to lead sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. And to do that, we have to reach enlightenment ourselves. And we do that through, understanding and practicing the path to enlightenment. And the main thing we have to develop then is bodhicitta. So since it's such a nice day, I think we'll stop here and enter the Mahayana path next time. So any questions? Bill?
I have a question about the Heart Sutra. In the third iteration of there's the I, and then there's the object, and then there's the consciousness. The third consciousness iteration at the end, in what I say, the no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. In other words, there's an extra. Instead of 6, there are 7 in that final, and the no quality of mind consciousness. What does that refer, and how does that apply to our meditation or to the 12 links? Thank you.
What does it say in the Heart Sutra? It's not coming to mind.
Well, in the way you say it there, you don't go through them all. Not no I and not no object, but the third iteration. It has one more at the end. It's 7 instead of 6, and yours says that. It says I don't have your version there, but no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There's an extra. There are not just 6, there are 7. Isn't that true?
So which translation are you looking at?
Well, just the one that I've memorized, but in yours it says up to, and then it says it adds one more, up to no thought, and then up to no mind consciousness. There are 7.
Trying to find it. Jen,
Yeah.
you got it?
I count 6. If you say, okay, so you have the first, you have the sources: no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visible form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no object of touch, no mental phenomenon.
Yeah. There's
that-
no element and so forth up to no
And this,
mind element.
this next one, yeah, the next one.
And then-
Up to no element of mental consciousness.
Yeah, yes. See, it doesn't say no. Could you read that one, Nick, the last one? See, you don't list them all there.
Right, there's no I element, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, up to no mind element, up to no element of mental consciousness.
Yeah, there you go. No mind element, and then no element of mental consciousness. Those are
Yeah,
two
so
they're different things.
I think here it's talking about the 6 senses, the no eye element and so forth up to mind element. So the consciousness of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And then it shortcuts all the way. There's no eye consciousness, no ear consciousness, no eye, ear, no nose consciousness, no tactile consciousness, no. Did I miss one? Anyway, so it's just summarizing the 6 consciousnesses. So the first bit, eye element up to no mind element, is talking about the sense organs, and then the next one abbreviates the 6 corresponding consciousnesses. So it's referring to the 6 consciousnesses. There's no seventh. It's not a seventh thing.
Yeah, well, okay, in the it says no quality of thought, no quality of seeing, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are 7.
Yeah, I don't know
And
that this is a different translation. Whose translation is that?
I don't know. It's the one that I memorized at the Tibet Center. But
So here, I think it's, we're going on, I think this is George Chernoff's translation.
he came to the center and looked astounded when he had to read that final verse.
George?
It's to me that the consciousness, the mind consciousness that is considered to be eternal is also empty. In other words, this eternal mind consciousness predicated upon a previous moment of consciousness is itself not eternal. One of the things, there has to be a going beyond the mind consciousness as well. So the God of karma only exists up until the point when you are released from it. Maybe I'm not making sense. I apologize.
No. I think if we're talking about different translations, it's a little difficult, that's all. I'm not familiar with that. And it's possible that one of the translations is wrong. So I can't really comment on it, I'm afraid. You know, based on this translation here that we recite at the beginning, I think it's talking about 6 sense organs and then 6 corresponding mental, 6 corresponding consciousnesses. That's how I'd see it. And it's, you know, it's a Heart Sutra, so it's kind of a shortcut too. What what I can look at is between now and next time is His Holiness's commentary on the Heart Sutra, which I have somewhere. So I'll try and find that and see if His Holiness explains it in more detail. How's that?
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we still have 10 minutes of holiday left, so let's dedicate the merit. We generated bodhicitta at the beginning. We talked about, we looked at Geshe Solam Rinchen, His Holiness's explanation of some of the aspects of that 4th verse. So we definitely created a lot of merit. So we want to dedicate this merit before it gets destroyed by anger or wrong views and so forth. So I think, you know, because of this merit, may I quickly reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And then we'll just do the few dedication verses. Thank you.
Saji Perki Jushi Jini De Genpadi Sange Jingdu Mike Uwagi Droku Namdak Jing Nature Pasho Jetsun Lame Tuting Roten Che Nankatin Natuk Chodke Padang Lo Santenbe Dole Sasungi Drole Munsulta Neguchi Yidam Guru Ramandala Kamniya Tayami. Gari Rawe Koe Shinkam Dear Pendang Dewa Mala Jongwene Chenre Zibwam Tenzin Gyatso Ye Jabde Sete Badu Tengyur Chig Tutsan Changjin Changun Gilwe Tenzin Kun Pelwe Kunzo Dopo tse choksun kowe legmon tudu pa dakso tuje gundu dak tensho. Your form embodies all Buddhas, your nature is that of Vajradhara. You are the root of the three jewels. Homage to you, O Gurus. In short, I seek your blessing, O protector, to be cared for by you from birth unremittingly through all my lives, and thus to become your chief disciple, holding every secret of my body, speech, and mind. O protector, please grant that all be auspicious for me to be foremost among your very first circle of disciples, wherever you manifest Buddhahood, so that all my temporal and ultimate wishes, without exception, may be effortlessly and spontaneously fulfilled. In all my lives, never separated from perfect Gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the stages and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. Furthermore, in life after life, may I, pleasing in return, be forever fostered by an accomplished Mahayana spiritual master, the source of every virtue of this world and beyond. In his care, may I acquire in him a firm, unshakable faith, pleasing him by every means possible, doing nothing even for an instant to disappoint. May my spiritual master impart to me every instruction and every teaching in its entirety. Having understood them faultlessly, may I practice them and bring them to perfection. May I never even for a moment fall under the sway of malevolent teachers or misleading friends. Having developed in every life belief in cause and effect, renunciation, the Bodhi-mind of pure view, may I embark in them continually with effortless experience. In every life, may every virtuous act gathered by way of body, speech, and mind be caused solely for the welfare of others and for the purest and highest enlightenment. Through this virtue may I swiftly, having gained Guru Buddha state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious supreme Bodhi mind, may it where unborn arise, and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. Migme te wei te chen chen raising, dream kyan pe wong po jom pe young, gan chen ke pe song yen song ka pa lo song dra pe jabla so wa de.
Okay, so thanks, Jen. Thanks, everybody. Just, remember, I'm not this big teacher or anything. I'm just sort of introducing or skimming across the surface of certain topics like the 12 links. And, but, these days there are a lot of books that explain these topics more fully or more correctly. So, in the intervening week, if you want to explore these topics and read around them and understand them and meditate on them more deeply for yourself, that's a good thing to do, I think. And like Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand or Lamrim Chenmo, they have more detailed explanations of the 12 links, and like His Holiness's book, The Meaning of Life, or Geshe Losang Tachin's teaching on King Udriyana and the Wheel of Life. So, there's plenty of supplementary material to explore. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you, and hope to see you next week.
Thank you very much, Nick. We're very grateful for your teaching.
Thanks, Nick.
I've got my own homework to do too.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, thank you.